What's up YouTube, Chris is So Pro here, coming at you with a new segment I like to call Know Your Cards, how they work and why. So basically, the point of this segment is to explain some very tricky rulings that a lot of people are still confused about, even after a lot of things change, especially with the changes in priority, changing a bunch of cards. And I want to help you understand your cards so you don't have to do it yourself. So basically, what I'm coming at here with today is cards are the two cards Effect Veiler and Skill Drain. Now basically these two cards are very powerful cards. They were very powerful last format and I'm pretty sure they will continue being powerful into this next September format. But what kind of cards do each of these cards negate, and why don't they negate certain types of cards? Effect Veiler says, while this card Effect Veiler reads, during your opponent's main phase, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard to select one face-up effect monster your opponent controls, and negate the effects of that monster until the end phase. Now, there are some very tricky rulings with this card, and then once people apply this card's rulings to certain cards, they try to apply Skill Drain's ruling to that card, which is completely different. Now, I don't have a copy of Fiendish Chain on me, but I'm going to talk about Fiendish Chain when I talk about Skill Drain, because they are practically the same thing. But the way that we're going to talk about these cards with are cards that get sent to the graveyard. Now basically, Effect Veiler, without priority now, when your opponent summons a monster, you are free to just drop the Veiler on the summon now. So basically, what does Veiler stop? Veiler stops ignition effects, monsters that activate on the field, that you say, I'm going to activate this monster's effect. So if you wanted to negate Breaker, the Magical Warrior, breaking a card by removing its counter, then you could. Also, it could negate the effects of cards that just plain activate on the field. Like when Breaker summoned, you can go, okay, I'll drop Veiler on the summon of Breaker so it doesn't gain its counter. Now, some of the more tricky cards that Veiler negates are cards like Exiled Force, Rescue Rabbit, and Thunder King Ryo and Stardust Dragon. Basically, what you can do with this card is when you have a card that you know is going to stop your stuff, you could just go, okay, I'll drop Effect Veiler on this card early. I mean, Thunder King Ryo getting sent usually happens during your turn, which you can't activate Effect Veiler then. But it's just one of the cards that in those rare situations, it can stop. Any card that tributes itself or says, I send this card from this place to another place, will activate in the place you are sending it from, but will resolve in the place you are sending it to. Such as Rescue Rabbit activates on the field, but resolves in the banish pile. So, Effect Veiler's effect says that monster's effect is negated until the end phase. Since it activates on the field and resolves removed from play, then Effect Veiler will negate the card, because it doesn't say negate the effects of the card on the field, it says negate the effects of the monster. Now, graveyard effects, like Destroyed by Battle, and activate when this card is sent somewhere, Veiler will not stop that, because effects cannot be stopped when they are sent like that. The monster resets where it is, and it's a very confusing ruling, but it also works like that with Tour Guide from the Underworld and Sangan. Whenever Sangan's sent to the graveyard after being summoned off of a Tour Guide no longer affects it by saying the effect's negated, and you get your search from Sangan. Now, let's look at Skill Drain. When I was talking about people trying to apply the rulings from Effect Veiler over to Skill Drain and Fiendish Chain, I was talking about people say, oh, Rescue Rabbit gets negated because Rescue Rabbit is on the field when it activates, so shouldn't Skill Drain negate it? Shouldn't Skill Drain negate Thunder King? Shouldn't Skill Drain negate Stardust? No, it's completely irrelevant. Yes, they do activate on the field, but it doesn't matter where they activate. What matters is where they resolve. They resolve off of the field completely. Rescue Rabbit resolves banished, Stardust, Thunder King, all that resolve in the graveyard. Skill Drain clearly states, pay 1,000 life points, the effects of all face-up effect monsters are negated. That means monsters on the field. With Skill Drain, sure, you can activate activating the effect on the field of stuff like Rescue Rabbit works like that, but they resolve off of the field. Since Skill Drain doesn't negate the activation, then the cost sends them to the graveyard, to the banish pile, and then they resolve there. Where Skill Drain can no longer touch them because Skill Drain does not affect cards in the graveyard or remove from play. Same thing goes with Soul Drain because the monsters activate on the field. I still don't understand this game a lot. There's still some things that I need to read up on as a judge, but for all I know, Soul Drain might be able to negate Rescue Rabbit, and oh, no, yeah, no, Soul Drain doesn't, because Soul Drain's worded differently. Soul Drain is worded that effects in the graveyard and banish cannot activate. So Rescue Rabbit and stuff like that's already activated when they get sent there. Why is Fiendish Chain the same as Skill Drain? Because basically Fiendish Chain says when you flip it, select a face-up effect monster on the field, and negate that monster cannot. That monster's effects are negated and it cannot declare an attack. Now basically, Fiendish Chain works like an equip card. It selects its target and it continuously affects that monster. But if you go, I activate Rescue Rabbit, or I activate Thunder King, and they activate on the field, since Fiendish Chain does not negate activations, they can activate. Once they're in that respective pile, Fiendish Chain is no longer continuously affecting a monster on the field. So when that monster is gone and starts resolving in its respective place, then that card does not. Then Fiendish Chain is no longer targeting it because it's not face up on the field. That's it for this segment, guys. Rate, comment, subscribe. Next segment that I'm going to actually probably be starting today is how confusing cards work. I know that some of these cards that I'm going to be talking about in this next segment have given me an extreme amount of trouble, especially with adminning on Dueling Network. The first one I'm going to talk about is Appropriate. Now that I completely understand this card, and the bad ruling I gave on it on Dueling Network was because of a language barrier, which sucked. I couldn't understand what the people were saying. And I was like, yes, Appropriate lets you draw, but I didn't understand that the guy was asking that the guy activated. You know what? I'll get into that. The link will be up here, right there, as soon as the video goes up. I'm Chris is So Pro. Rate, comment, subscribe, guys. Peace.